Today we're covering the reading-writing connection, which is Chapter 1. So in this chapter, we'll cover the connection between reading and writing. So, the quote for this chapter, meaning doesn't reside ready-made in the text or in the reader. It happens during the transaction between reader and text by Louise Rosenblatt. So, in this quotation, Louise Rosenblatt says that when reading, meaning happens during a transaction between reader and text. What do you think that she means by transaction? Also, how can writing be a part of that transaction? So you want to make sure that you think about what this means. So what does she mean by transaction between reading and reader? And what does she mean by transaction? So take some time to think about that. As a note, in order to make sense of your new information or what it is that you've read, you want to make it a part of your own thinking, and this is called internalizing it. You'll need to read and write about it in order to make sense of what it is that you've learned. So in this chapter, there are a couple of learning outcomes. The first learning outcome is reading and writing to learn. The second one is writing to share. The third learning outcome is understanding reading and writing assignments. So what strategy is talked about or discussed within this chapter that helps you to understand your reading and writing assignments? So you want to make sure that you know that and write that down as well. Learning outcome 4 is using the traits for reading and writing. So there are 6 traits. What are the 6 of them? Which is the most important? That'll be discussed here, but make sure you know it. Learning outcome number 5 is using graphic organizers for reading and writing. So, with learning outcome number 1, reading and writing to learn, this is where the reading and writing are both forms of communication. So with that being said, readers make contact with ideas and concepts that are on the page. So when you're reading, you want to make sure that you are making contact with the ideas and the concepts on the page, not simply just getting through the reading. This is done when the reader focuses on the reading material. So again, the key word here is to focus. So you want to make sure that when you are reading, you are focusing. This helps you to make contact with the reading. The writer is also going to make contact, but this is going to be with their own ideas. So this is done by putting fingers to the keyboard or pen to paper. So when you are thinking about something and you communicate it, whether it's writing it down or whether it's typing, this is you as a writer making contact with your own ideas of what it is that you've just read. Reading and writing, they share a reciprocal relationship. So the word reciprocal, what does that mean? You want to make sure that you know what that means in order to help you understand what this means. So writing allows you to respond on a personal level. So this means you can use your own thoughts and your own words. So this is what writing enables you to do. Now, of course, when you have assignments, you want to make sure that this is formal. But again, writing allows you to respond on a personal level. The next thing, reading and writing, they are 2 very effective learning tools. So think about your reading and your writing this way. So when you're reading something, you're not just reading it because you have to. You are reading because you need to learn something from it. So reading is an effective tool in order for you to learn. Same thing goes with writing. It also serves as an effective learning tool because when you write something down, you are sharing what it is that you've learned, or let's just say you're taking notes. You are learning because you are taking what you're taking what you've read or what you've heard, putting it in your own words, and you're writing it down. So that's how writing is an effective learning tool. So your reading assignments, they provide content. Your writing helps you engage with the content in order to help you learn it. So learning outcome 1, continued. You want to make sure that you keep a class notebook. So some strategies to help you learn or writing to learn is you want to do some note taking. So you want to make sure you use an effective note taking system. That's going to be discussed a little bit later on. You want to write down your first thoughts or just be aware or cognizant of your first thoughts. You want to do a status check. So what that means is while you are reading something, you want to stop and make sure that you understand it. So you want to check your status on it. When you are writing something, you want to make sure that you stop and you do a status check. Does this make sense? Am I understanding what I'm writing? So that's a status check. Listing. So this is where you just write down a list of ideas, and this is going to help you to see if there are themes within something. You can also use written dialogue. So that's best for things such as personal narratives. So what was the dialogue that people were having within a certain conversation? That also will help you figure out what themes are. So you can use written dialogues. Also, you can do nutshelling. So this is basically where you just simplify things. So in a nutshell, that's what nutshelling is. You want to ask pointed questions. So specific questions about something. That's going to help you to write to learn as well. And then, of course, final thoughts. So if you're writing something, what is the point of writing something if you don't have a final thought of it? So final thoughts also help you when you are trying to write to learn. Some more of learning outcome 1, so some effective academic reading tips. So you want to make sure that you find a quiet place with no distractions. Sometimes it's difficult to find a place to read or write without distractions, but you want to make sure that you find a place that's quiet. So think about, what are some examples of places that are going to have little to no distraction in order for you to be able to read? Another thing, you want to make sure that you gather your materials. So let's just say that you have to read a chapter for this class or any other class. So what do you think that you need? So of course you need a book, you need something to write with because you are planning to take effective notes. You need a highlighter. So let's think about if you decide, okay, I'm going to go to the library. That's a quiet place for me to read without distractions. You get to the library, unpack your book bag, and you're missing your book. So what are you coming to read? So you want to make sure that you have your materials with you so that way it's easier for you to get right to work. You want to make sure that you divide your assignments into doable parts. So why does it make sense for you to divide your assignments into doable parts rather than just reading straight through if it's a longer piece of reading? You want to make sure that you answer that question. Another thing, you want to make sure that you approach your reading as a process. So this is another thing to keep in mind. What is the reading process? The next thing, you want to use proven strategies. So we are going to discuss the STRAP strategy. There's also KWL and SQ3R. So these are proven strategies, and we will discuss these later on, either in this chapter or subsequent chapters. You want to identify features of reading using the STRAP strategy. So what does the STRAP strategy stand for? Make sure you know that. You want to know also what to look for. So you can look and locate the thesis statement, and that tells you what the whole thing should be about. So you want to know what it is that you are looking for based off of the thesis statement. Another thing that you want to do is summarize what it is that you've learned. So with this is where you read the whole thing and you summarize it. So that gives you the main ideas and the main details of what it is that you've just read. So summarizing helps. Note questions. So do you have questions, or are there already given questions? If you can answer the given questions, then you know what it's about. If you can't, you probably need to reread. And then again, you want to review the reading and your notes. It's not enough to read something and then not think back on it or review it. It doesn't make sense to take notes and never look at them again. So you want to make sure that you review your reading and your notes as well. Learning outcome 2, writing to share what it is that you've learned. This is important because it's not enough to learn something and not share it with anyone. So the second important function of writing is to share what it is that you've learned. So when you write to share, you present what it is that you've learned to an audience. This can include your instructor, your classmates, co-workers, whatever it is. You are showing what it is that you've learned. This involves making your writing clear, complete, and ready to be read by others. So what this means is that you want to make sure that your writing is free of errors. There's nothing in it that's vague, that the writer has to puzzle out what you are meaning. So you want to make sure that your writing is clear, complete, and ready to be read by others. The next thing we'll discuss is the learning connection, and that is what you will see on the bottom in figure 1.1. It shows you the connection between writing to learn and writing to share your learning. So if you look on the top where it says effective thinking, and that is in the blue box, that's the connection between writing to learn and writing to share. So your effective thinking, again, is a link between the two functions of writing. So writing to learn involves exploring and forming your thoughts. Writing to share involves clarifying and fine-tuning these thoughts. So for example, when you are writing to learn, when you are taking notes, this is going to help you, this is where you are going to explore ideas, explore your opinions on things. You're going to use research if needed, or you're just going to write down what it is that you've read or what you've heard, for example, in a lecture. That's where you are writing to learn. Now, writing to share is, for example, if you took what you've learned, whether it's in notes or whether it's from a lecture, and you were turning in an assignment or you're presenting it to someone, that is where you are writing something to share what it is that you've learned. Now, when you're writing to learn, that should help you to have effective thinking because you're taking notes, so it should be expanding to what you already know, or adding to what you already know, or actually just being something new that you didn't know before. So that will lead to effective thinking. When you're writing to share your learning, that's when you can kind of think about it as you're going to show off. So this is what I've learned. So you are writing all about what it is that you've learned, and that's what writing to share learning is. So the range of writing, that's going to be on the bottom right where you see the arrow and all the list of things, your writing is going to likely cover the entire spectrum throughout your life. Regardless if you're writing anything, it's going to be on a spectrum. So in college, there's going to be a focus on the more formal forms, such as your essays and your reports. That's going to be on the top where it says formal and thoughtful. On the bottom where it says casual and quick, those will be things like text messaging, microblogs, so things like Twitter where you have only 140 characters, emails to friends, blogs, personal narratives, assuming it's a personal narrative you're not turning in. Those are going to be casual and quick. So again, 140 characters, if you're going to tweet something, that's going to be casual and quick. Whereas if you have a research paper, that's going to be a couple of pages, and it needs to be formal and thoughtful because, of course, again, you are writing to share what it is that you've learned. So again, your writing is going to be on this range, and it's going to cover the entire spectrum. Some more of learning outcome number 2. So you have effective academic writing. So some of these things overlap the same way as you had effective academic reading, you have effective academic writing. So again, for effective academic writing, you want to make sure that you find a quiet place to work. So again, where's a quiet place where you can go and you can just write? So think about that, where you can go and just write. Another thing, you want to make sure you gather your materials, just like when you're reading, you want to make sure that you're prepared in that way for writing, that you've gathered all of your materials. Again, you want to identify the features of the assignment using the STRAP strategy. So for example, if you are writing and you say, this is what my subject is going to be, you should not deviate from that subject. It should be the same thing. So use the STRAP strategy to help you. You want to understand the dynamics of the assignment. Now, what that means is that if you are to write an argumentative paper, you need to understand that you have your side, the other side, as well as a counter argument for the other side. Now, if you are writing a persuasive paper, that's simply you trying to persuade someone of something. So you only have your side. You don't need the other two sides. So that's argumentation and persuasion. So again, understand the dynamics. If you are to write a persuasive paper when the assignment calls for an argumentative, you did not understand the dynamics of the assignment. Another thing, you want to approach your writing as a process, and we will also discuss the writing process, but you want to make sure that you know the steps of the writing process. You want to know the basics of writing. So what are the basics of writing? So things like capitalization, punctuation, those things, the basics of writing, and then collaborate with others. So in what way can you collaborate with others when you write a paper? So what I'm asking is, what is it that you can do with someone else that will help you to be able to write papers? Think about that and be able to answer it. So learning outcome 3, understanding reading and writing assignments. So you have the STRAP strategy, and it is used to analyze your reading and writing assignments. Again, your STRAP strategy is a tool to help you analyze your reading and writing assignments. Make sure you know this. So using the STRAP strategy is going to be able to help you better understand your reading and writing assignments. So for subject, which is the S, this is where the person, idea, event, or object that is being discussed or described. Subject and topic are often used interchangeably. So what is the topic of something? What is the subject of something? Those are the same things. The next thing is a P, which is purpose. So purpose is a specific reason for the reading or the writing. So what is my purpose when I write something? What is the author's purpose when I'm reading something? So those are questions you would ask yourself to figure out the purpose. The primary purposes are usually to inform, to persuade, to share, to entertain. So if you see to something, that generally is going to let you know that this is the author's purpose. So for example, if I am trying to persuade someone that we should be able to have a wet campus at Texas Tech University. Now, what is going to be my purpose? To inform, to persuade, to share, to entertain. So yes, the answer would be to persuade. And a lot of times you will find the purpose somewhere in the wording of the subject or somewhere. So like I said, if I am trying to persuade people, so then you know the purpose is to persuade. The next thing is your audience. You want to make sure that you are very aware of your audience because that dictates how you are going to write. So if you are writing formally, then you know that that's going to be usually an assignment on the top of the continuum that we talked about earlier when we looked at the spectrum. If you're writing informally, those are usually for things on the bottom of the spectrum. So again, your purpose is a specific reason, or your audience, sorry. Your audience is the intended readership. So who is going to be reading what you write, or who does the reader want to target for their writing? The next thing is that you have type, and type is the form of a reading, selection, or piece of writing. Some academic writing is going to be essays, reports, summaries, narratives. Those are different types of academic types. So what are some examples of type that are informal? So write some of those down and be prepared to discuss it. And finally, the last thing is role. So role is what position the writer assumes. So is this person an expert? Are they a student? Is this person a concerned citizen? So that's the role. Roles will usually be nouns. So whether it's, like I said, a student, is it an expert? Is it an educator? Is it a student? So if it's an actual person, place, or thing, a noun, then that's going to be your role. Your purpose is going to always start with to and then some verbs. So to persuade, to entertain. So remember that for the STRAP strategy. All right, so this is just a class activity, and we will do this one later. All right, so learning outcome 4, using the traits for reading and writing. So as I said earlier, be sure that you are aware that there are 6 traits and be able to name and use them. So be able to apply the 6 traits as well. So the key elements of written language help you to understand reading and develop your own writing. So they are helpful for reading as well as for writing. So you have ideas. There's a reason that ideas is the very first trait listed. Ideas are the foundation that the texts are built upon. So as a reader, if the writer gives you no idea, you don't know where to go with what it is that they've written. As a writer, if you have no idea, meaning you don't know what the topic is, you don't know what the subject is, you don't know where to go. So again, ideas is the first and most important trait, because without them, you cannot go anywhere else. Now, the next important one is going to be organization. A sensible pattern of organization that the reading follows. So that's going to be your organization. Ideas and organization work closely together to form meaning. So again, think about if you have an idea, but it's not organized, what you're writing still doesn't make sense, or what you're reading still will not make sense. So think about if you're supposed to be reading a story and it's in chronological order, and they start off with the birth of someone, and then they talk about this person's high school experience, and then they go back to talk about something that happened when the person was 5, and then it just went to when the person was older. It's not going to make much sense because it's jumping around. Now, if it was in chronological order, meaning when the person was born, and then it went to when they were 5, and then it talks about their high school experience, and then when they were older, that's going to make more sense because it's organized. The next thing you have is voice, and that's the author's tone or attitude towards the topic. So basically, that's the special way in which the writer speaks to the reader. So that's what voice is. The next thing is word choice, and this is specific terminology that's used. So what words are you using, and do they work here? So for example, if you are having to write something in a science class, you want to make sure that you use science terms. So if it's a chemistry course, you want to make sure that you are speaking of things that are familiar to chemistry. The next thing is sentence fluency. That's sentences that flow smoothly and communicate clearly. So you want to make sure that you vary your sentences. You have some shorter sentences and you have some longer sentences. You do not want to have a lot of long sentences or a lot of short sentences, because that's not sentence fluency. So you want to make sure you have that. And then the next thing is conventions. These are rules for grammar usage and mechanics. So again, they're rules. This is what you have to have in order for things to make sense. So that's the final one. So again, the 6 traits, you have ideas, organization, voice, word choice, sentence fluency, and conventions. Now, learning outcome 5 is using graphic organizers for your reading and your writing. So graphic organizers, what they help you do is map out your thinking for reading and writing assignments. So they help you to keep your ideas organized. So you want to choose one that works best for you and for your assignment. Not just, oh, well, I like Venn diagrams, so I'm going to use it here. You want to choose the best one for you as well as for your assignment. So you have timelines, a line diagram, you have a cause and effect organizer, evaluation chart. You also have a process diagram, a Venn diagram, problem solution web, as well as clusters. So these are just some examples of graphic organizers. So a timeline, this is used for personal narratives. As you can see, it goes straight up and down and it's numbered. So you've got event 1, event 2, event 3. Now chronological order, you cannot change it around. If you remember the example I just gave with someone being 5 and then going to high school and then being in their elder years. So that has to go in a certain order. So that's what a timeline is best suited for. The next thing you have is a process diagram, and it is used to collect details for science-related writing, such as steps in a process. So if you were to be taking a lab, you would probably use a process diagram to help you better understand that or better explain it. The next thing is a line diagram. This is used to collect and organize details for your informational essays. So basically, if you're just given information and the order doesn't necessarily matter, as long as it's hierarchical, that's what you're going to use a line diagram for. The fourth one is going to be figure 1.7. That is the Venn diagram. That is used for comparison. You can also use a T-chart, but the easiest one is going to be a Venn diagram. So on the outside, you're going to have information for topic A and then information for topic B. So those are the contrasts. And then in the middle is going to be similarities. Figure 1.8 is the cause and effect organizer, and it's used to collect and organize details for cause and effect essays. And then the last one is going to be problem solution web, and it's used to map out problem solution essays. All right, so let's discuss some review here. Question number 1, why can reading and writing be considered learning tools? Make sure you can answer that. Number 2, what are 2 formal forms of writing? So give me 2 examples of formal writing. Number 3, what is the strap strategy? Now this is one question, but there are 2 parts to this. So what does the strap stand for? And then what is the strap strategy used for? Oh, no, that's number 4. What does each letter in the strap strategy stand for? So questions number 3 and 4 are 2 different things. The third question is what is it used for? So what is it? And then number 4, what does each letter stand for? Number 5, what traits of writing should you address in reading and writing assignments? So simplified, what are the traits? So that's number 5. So make sure that you take notes on this chapter, answer any questions posed, and answer these review questions as well.